Welcome back. Today I have the great pleasure of interviewing an old friend of mine named Tom Gagliano. You may remember him. He came in about a year and a half or so ago, and I was so encouraged that his words resonated with so many of you. He's a great friend. He used to be a Yankees fan. I do hold that against him. He's a best-selling author working on another book as we speak, and he'll share more about that in our interview today. He's also a blogger and has been on some pretty high-level TV shows, interviewed some very prominent actors and entertainers. He has so much to give for both the unfaithful and the betrayed. He's a wonderful friend. Buckle in because you're going to love the content today. Please know the content that you're about to hear can absolutely change your recovery as well as your partner's. Thank you for joining me today. I'm with a friend of Affair Recovery and certainly a friend of mine, Tom Gagliano, who is an author, speaker, has a podcast, and is not just an author, but is a best-selling author. So, Tom, thank you so much for joining me again today.
Thank you for having me, Sam. It's an honor, truly.
Well, last time we had a wonderful discussion, and I had so many people, so many hurting people that reached out, and I thought it would be perfect timing to have you come back in and talk a little bit more about a pretty compelling topic that we'll get into in a minute. But for people that haven't met you, don't know much about you, take 2 minutes, talk about the books that you've written, talk about your podcast, and then I'm going to hit you with some pretty hard questions.
You got it. My best-selling book is called The Problem Was Me, a title that my wife loved, by the way. She says, thank you. You finally got that one right. Thank you, honey. My next book is called Don't Put Your Crap in Your Kid's Diaper. And this is not knocking parents. It's really understanding that, we have messages we give our children that are good, positive messages and some that aren't so positive. So it takes a look at those messages that maybe need a little tweaking. And I urge everybody to check out my podcast. In the search bar, you could put The Problem Was Me. Start by the first one. They're in the wrong order. It's Spotify and Apple. I don't know why. But I deal with childhood messages. I believe childhood messages influence every part of our lives, from the intimacy we have or don't have, our parenting skills, careers we choose, everything. So they start that way and they move up to all these different levels. So yeah, that's what I'd urge people to look at. And I want to say one thing. I was a culprit of infidelity with my wife, and there is nothing that hurts a man or woman more than infidelity. Nothing. And even I've been in this for a long time, and I've made my wife a priority today, and my children, which is what I didn't do when I had that destructive entitlement. The key is to make them feel that they are important now. They matter. They come first. And this is why what I'm going to talk about today is not putting a little Band-Aid on a dam. It's really a life transition. It's restructuring your life around healthy habits, not around the habits that tell you or give you permission to do things, regardless of the pain it causes your spouse and your children. So that's the first thing that I wanted to get to. So let me just say, when a couple comes to me, I tell them, first of all, are you in or out of the relationship? That's not my choice, it's theirs. But if you're going to choose out, go through the front door. Do it right. Okay? We all make mistakes. Sometimes, we marry the wrong person or we're involved with the wrong person and life happens. Look, it's the way life is. And if that's the case, go through the front door. Put your big girl, big boy shoes on. Don't go through the back door like a scared little kid, cheating, keeping secrets, because what you're doing is you're leaving dead bodies all over the place. You're hurting those you love. So that's one of the first things that I ask a couple. Because you know what I learned, Sam? So many people do not know how to give love and accept love. And I'm not just talking about people that commit infidelity. I'm talking about people in whole. They just don't know how.
And why do you think that is? Why is it so hard? Because I will tell you a little secret. It was very challenging for me to receive love, I think in many ways because growing up I felt extremely neglected and abandoned. And it's been a minefield to walk through. And this isn't even what we were going to talk about, but why do you think it is, Tom, in just 2 minutes, so hard for people to receive love and to even give love?
Well, I think there's two reasons. One is if a child feels like they don't matter to their parents, they don't stop loving their parents, they stop loving themselves.
Ooh.
So I grow up now, and if I don't feel like I deserve love, when it comes my way, I'm like, whoa, this is uncomfortable, and I sabotage it. Sometimes we are not modeled by our caregivers on how they gave love and received love. Maybe they shut down, ran away, had addictions, so we have no modeling. So either I don't feel like I deserve it, so I sabotage it, or I really don't know how to ride the bicycle. I never learned. And I got to learn. That's where I come in. That's where my group comes in, because what this is, recovery is a we process. It's not a me process. You're not going to handle this alone. And that feeds into the next piece. And that is, I treat this like I would treat any addiction. I'm a recovering addict. How do I treat addiction? Well, first you have to know that addiction is a disease that tells you you don't have a disease. People in addiction without recovery think they can control their addiction. The reality is the addiction controls them. People out there think I could stop what I'm doing anytime I want. See, I can handle it. You can't handle it. You need to make it a we process, or you're going to be telling yourself that forever. So addiction, again, is a disease that says you don't have an addiction. And if I know and accept that first step, this is what I use with clients, acceptance. And how do I get them to know that, Sam? I make them do an unmanageability list. How, as you're acting out, hurt your wife, your husband, your children, you? How do you feel about yourself? God, family, finances, business. And after they do this manageability list, they go, whoa, I didn't know I paid this kind of bill. Now we go to the second step, witnesses, a we process. We need healers in our life. We need people to help guide us through this, to help structure ourselves in healthy habits. Third step, what are the actions these healers, this is my groups, the healers are the witnesses, I call them. My groups, what are the actions the group is saying to take that they've walked through that have helped them create healthy habits? Now here's the thing. Am I willing to take direction? Because my biggest obstacle with people is they don't want to do any process they can't control. Now we go to childhood again. Childhood, fears. Make control. I'm afraid you're going to let me down like they did in childhood. So, again, addiction. Okay, I believe most addictions start in childhood. When a child feels like they don't matter again. My father, when he was out drinking and doing all his stuff and gambling, I never said at 10, gee, my father has an alcohol problem. I said, what's the matter with me that my father doesn't care about me? I must be worthless.
Every time you say that, because you alluded to that in our last interview, but every time you say that, there's such a, it's like a tuning fork that just kind of reverberates through my soul that goes, whoa, like that even to me, helps me understand how we process these big emotions. And then I tell so many men, because we're experts at this, right? We put that stuff in a box and we put it on the shelf in the garage and we go, I ain't opening up that again. And then we wonder why, we have affairs, we have addictions. And then somebody like you comes along and says, hey, that box, we got to pull that box down and open it up. And we're like, yeah, everything was fine until you said that. We're done. Send me a bill and we're done. But maybe talk about how that box holds the secret to being able to understand why we do what we do.
Well, if in childhood I become fragmented, I break into two parts. I show the world one part of myself, but I dare not show that unworthiness inside. Nobody's going to see that, Sam. Nobody. Now, here's the problem. Who am I talking to? Myself. I may be talking to the wrong person. Myself is isolation, and I come out with destructive entitlement, giving myself permission to do crazy things to fill that void. So what I try to do in groups is get the person to become congruent, not fragmented, oneself. Talk about what your addictive ritual is. We all have addictive rituals. We act out in our mind way before we act out physically, okay? So all group members know each other's ritual. All those witnesses know. So if we're exposing the ritual first to group members on text, to me, to your witnesses, okay, there's a better shot I'm not going to then take it to the next level and act it out physically. And I tell people, play the movie through, play the video through. What's going to happen the next morning when you wake up and you acted out on your wife or your husband? How are you going to feel when you look in their face? How are you going to feel when you look at your children's face? Play the video through. Don't just stop at the fantasy part. Play it through. So what happens many times is because we're fragmented, we keep to ourselves. We show the world one part of ourselves. And that's where I come in and I want to create congruency. But here's the thing. You got to trust the process that you can't control. Okay? That's what recovery is. But I can tell you per man, I have guys in my group that have been in my groups for 7, 8 years, and they will tell you they're happier than they ever been, and they're in a better relationship with even if they got divorced and found somebody else, they're happier than they've ever been because they're congruent. They're free. The chains are off. And this is what I try to teach my clients. Now, if you want to be in the relationship, the spouse or other partner needs to be in a we process as well because they've adapted a very dysfunctional role around the person that's doing the betraying. So it's not their fault. It's how they survived the relationship, but it's not healthy. So they have to go and get help themselves in a separate relationship. Not that it's their fault, but again, they've learned to adapt in a very dysfunctional way. So now they have to be in a we process as well. They have to get help as well. And this is how this works. Individual help and then coming together in the marriage. So what I do in the group process is I create a safe place where all the individuals share their ritual, know each other's stories, and they become witnesses. They're on group text, and they constantly give each other group text when they're struggling. And this way, again, now here's very important, Sam. They're learning to regulate their discomfort and conflict in a healthy way with other human beings. They're not regulating it in a way where they're acting it out in destructive ways. Now, this takes time. Got it? You learn slowly to trust the process. As you start to be fed rewards and say, you know what? I'm kind of feeling better about myself and about my marriage. It feeds into wanting to do this process more. You can't control it. You got to want to do it. Sam, you know something? People only get help when they want to, not when they need to. And until they want to, they're not going to get better.
And I think in so many ways, we confuse activity with effectiveness, right? Oh, I'm reading these books, and oh, I go to this counselor, and oh, I'm doing all these things. And then you come to a point that I see, and this is what I wanted to get your thoughts on in a very kind of streamlined way, is that so many times I will see an unfaithful spouse, male or female, who can't stop acting out. Now, some people would reframe that immediately and say, you mean won't stop acting out? And I totally respect that, especially as a betrayed. They would kind of go, hey, they just won't stop. And, we love groups at A Fair Recovery. We have a ton of groups for betrayed, for unfaithful, and for couples. We are a big proponent of groups. But in this scenario, what do you tell the unfaithful spouse when they sit down in your office and they're like, Tom, look, you're an expert. I'm an expert at screwing up. How can I stop acting out? I know that it has to be a we process, but talk a little bit more too about just how to help the unfaithful first understand how to put some boundaries when they really want it and stop acting out. And then how do you help the betrayed when they are married or involved in a relationship with someone that just can't stop? And they're sitting here going, I don't know what to do. Where do I turn? What do I do?
It's a great question. Number one, I make them do that unmanageability list so they actually see the bill they're paying. They may be thinking they're paying $100 when they're paying $5,000. So they're looking at the bill. How do you like yourself in the morning? What is with all of these relationships you have in life, including work, everything. And if they're willing, there's two willingnesses, Sam. There's the willingness to get help. They're the ones that come to see me. And then there's the tougher ones, willingness to take direction. Can you take direction? I can tell you the problem is the rewards don't come right away. They don't. You got to walk through the pain. If the rewards came right away, this would be a lot easier, but it doesn't. You got to walk through the pain to get the rewards. What do I tell the one that's being betrayed? You need to work on yourself. I know that sounds unfair. I know there's a part of you that feel, well, he or she is the one that hurt me. I get it. I get this all the time. But if you work on yourself with the support of other people, you build a better sense of self. Your modeling is going to be more than anything you're going to tell the person that's betraying you. You could lecture them to death. You could, none of that's going to work. Your
Right.
modeling, when they know you're done, and you're getting better and you're healing, that schema, that adaptive role is changing. Now, all of a sudden, now they got a choice, because many addicts only do something when they're afraid of losing something they want or not gaining something they have. Those are the two reasons that'll get them to say, maybe I should do something about this. So it's really consequences that create the willingness to take direction and to change. And that's really the best thing that I have. Now, when I get couples into a place where the sobriety is happening and they're starting to stay sober, and you need that. You know, I talk about uncomfortable conversations is the key to closeness. When you grew up in dysfunction and you see mom and dad yelling at each other, shutting down and running away, who the hell wants to have uncomfortable conversations? I never did. I ran. But I've learned that if you learn to do uncomfortable conversations in the right way, in a healthy way, sharing your feelings, acknowledging the other feelings, and putting boundaries down. I'm not going to do this if you're going to just weaponize the past and yell at me all the time. All right? You start the conversation on, what do we agree on? We want to be in this marriage. Start at a positive place. So we start with the uncomfortable conversations, which will lead to resolution rather than running away. So I teach clients, couples, and I teach my group members. We role play all the time in group, all the time, to build. Group is a testing ground to build a better way to communicate when we go out in the outside world.
I want you to help the unfaithful in this moment. Why do we unfaithful run away or hate? Why do we freak out? Our heart rate jumps. If we wore a heart rate monitor, it would start beeping. Why do we hate these uncomfortable conversations? Is it shame? Is it self-hatred? Is it fear? Is it panic? Is it terror? Is it childhood trauma? What is it that makes us run?
It's a mixture of the version of intimacy we saw as a child. Think of it. You see, Sam, you, me, everybody, we look at our childhood through adult lenses today. But we forget what it's like when we actually were in childhood, the actual experiences. So if I'm watching my dad running out the door every time something got a little bit conflicted, if I'm seeing that my mother is crying and shutting down every time my father comes home, you know what version of intimacy I have? Yeah, right. I'm going to do intimacy like a hole in the head. I ain't going there. So I'm terrified of intimacy instead of feeling, wow, intimacy is great. It's wonderful. It's close. I become terrified of intimacy. Plus, added on to that is, again, what I said. If I'm fragmented and I carry that into my adult life, and I feel like if I show you my inside, you're going to run into me, well, then I'm not showing you my inside. It ain't happening. I'm going to protect that with my two fists. And every time you come close, I'm going to punch and jab to push you away, because if you see that, you're going to do what my parents did. You're going to reject me and run. So these are some of the things that stop us from being intimate. Now, what happens is our filters are all contaminated. I tell clients all the time, what your wife or husband says may not be what you hear. What you say may not be what they hear. For instance, my father was always criticizing me. So if my wife says to me, you forgot to take out the garbage, you know what I heard? I'm a horrible, defective, horrible husband. You piece of blank. So what we hear is what we say, and what we say is what we hear. Because imagine if we're having two different conversations. We do a destructive dance. And we do the destructive dance, nothing good's going to happen. We're going down that bad street over and over and over again.
Now, you said something, I thought everything that you said was fantastic. Now, for my betrayed spouses, there's a point where we say, as betrayeds, okay, well, Tom, that's great. So what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to serve my unfaithful with sugar on top and kiss their butt and suck up to them? What am I supposed to do? And I don't want our betrayeds to think, oh, listen, set aside your healing or your own well-being for your poor unfaithful. That's not what we're saying. But how does the betrayed spouse help that particular unfaithful find safety to have those conversations and to let their guard down and embrace it. I'm not saying at any level, hey, you betrayeds need to make it safe for them, and if not, it's your fault. Not one bit. But what are some tips that the betrayed can use, male or female, to help that unfaithful start to let their guard down a little bit more?
It's not up to them, Sam, unfortunately. It really isn't. The person that does the betraying, I try to tell them, hey, listen, I did it. You're not a bad person. You're not, I would jump in front of a car for my children. But when you talk about addiction, addiction becomes oxygen to the person. They can't stop or they're going to die emotionally. So you can't expect the person that's betrayed to understand this. They can't understand this. They don't understand addiction. And I go there with the other person to say, listen, you're a discouraged person. You just need help of other people. Let us in. For the person that has been betrayed, I tell them, listen, try your best not to focus on them because I know what you're going to do. They do the same thing. They're going to try to control the crap out of the person, feeling if I control them, if I know where they are, if I know what they're doing, it's an understandable reaction. If I'm afraid, that I want to control, but control is uncontrollable. It doesn't work. So I have to detach with love, and work on myself. And the person that does the betraying has to really be selfish in a way and just work on themselves. Because if the marriage is going to get better or the relationship is going to get better, it has to start with the person doing the betraying to stop the betraying. It's the foundation the house is built on. The house is going to fall if you don't do that. So they have to work on themselves. The other person has to detach with love. And when they want to control and codependency and all these adaptive dysfunctional roles come up, they need their own we process of people that have been through what they've been through to help them understand what the process is. And then when both people work on themselves, then I could come in with marriage sessions and I can put it together. Then I could make this work. And I will tell you that what spouses of that have been betrayed will tell me is that what I've noticed is he or she is paying more attention to me. I'm becoming more of a priority. One, what I've noticed is their witnesses, their supports, they're very important to them. They're always in contact with them. They're building structure and healthy habits. What I've noticed is they don't always have to be right. They're feeling a little better about themselves and they're able to hear me more. What I've noticed is they're talking to me about their problems more, especially the problems that bother them more.
I think all of that is brilliant because it helps both sides of the equation, right? When we just help one side, we blow it because, for example, the betrayed feels completely abandoned and left for dead and all the focus is on the unfaithful. But when we just help the betrayed, then the unfaithful's, trying to white knuckle it, wing it, just reading books, doing their own thing, and that's a disaster. My last question for you, because I think you've said so many nuggets. I've wanted to take notes left and right on so much of what you've said. But you alluded to something earlier, and I think it's a big facet of the recovery piece, and that is that self-hate affects our self-care. And in this society, and especially in recovery when we've blown up our life, everything is fallen apart, we don't understand the need for self-care. And I think there's just some real confusion over what self-care is, and some people call it me time, right? But why does self-hate affect self-care so much? And what is proper self-care for the unfaithful and the betrayed?
Self-care means I need to take care of myself. And that doesn't mean I'm being selfish. Okay? So I got to know the difference between self-care and selfish. If I take care of myself and I detach with love, that doesn't mean I'm being selfish. I may get that message from childhood. Like my goal for me was to take care of my mother when my father was always out doing his thing. Okay? So I learned if I take care of myself, I must be selfish. So I got to challenge that message, Sam, like we have to challenge so many messages in my podcast that I talk about to know selfish doesn't mean I'm taking care of myself. It's self-care. These are the things that I decipher a little bit and to understand the wrong messages we received So many of us are codependent where we're working on our partner's problems more than they want to work on their problems. That ain't gonna work. Right. So I got to work on me, not on them more than they want to work on them. And that's what I get so many calls, I got to tell you, from people that say, you have to fix my husband. I heard your podcast. Oh my God, you got to fix. And I'm like, well, why doesn't your husband email me? Why are you emailing me? No, 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 no. You don't understand. What you said is what he needs. You need to work on you right now until he's willing to work on him or until she's willing to work on her. I got both ends. That's how it works.
So much of what you said is so compelling. Take 2 minutes, talk to the individual that's watching right now that is wondering. They say this to me all the time. Is there hope for me? Like, you see people come into your office or you meet electronically like this with so many people. And I'm sure that they come to you and they go, is there really hope? Take 2 minutes and give some tangible hope to those people that are just feeling like they're a mess, feeling like they just can't see a light at the end of the tunnel.
So I can tell everybody out there that devastations create miracles. Okay? You may feel like now life is devastating, but please believe me, I've seen more miracles. And I'm not saying it's me. Please, I'm not putting the badges. It's the willingness to take direction. I could be a genius if you're willing to take direction, and I could be a moron if you don't. So it's the willingness to take direction. Miracles come from devastations, but you have to do things you don't feel like doing. Don't wait till you feel like doing it. You'll never do it. So when you get individual help, either for the betrayer or for the person being betrayed, don't wait till you feel like doing it. And don't think that you're going to be told what you want to do. My best thinking never worked. That's how I got myself here. So again, find a professional you're comfortable with, groups you're comfortable with, and take direction. You don't have to listen to everything they say. But if you see somebody that has serenity or peace of mind, ask them, what are you doing that has helped you? Take that direction. But don't wait till you feel like doing it. You're never going to feel like, nobody wants to walk through pain. I don't want to walk out of this podcast and get smacked in the head. I don't like pain either. But you got to walk through pain sometimes. Can I just share something quick with my son? Because, childhood messages are always something very powerful for me. I just want to tell you that in 8th grade, I went to see my son's counselor. And she called me in, and I thought, oh my God, what did my son do? Because in 8th grade for me, I was almost in jail. So I figured, okay, let's see what this is going to be about. And she told me something that it's probably the biggest celebration I have in my life. She said, Mr. Gagliano, what's your secret? And I was like, uh-oh, what the heck does this mean? She says, your son talks so proudly of you with respect and love. I never heard a kid talk like that about his father.
Wow.
Please, what is your secret? Now, I wasn't ready for that conversation, Sam. Honestly, I was ready for the conversations my parents got that, your kid's got to get locked up or whatever. The point is, that was something I'll never forget. Even now, it kind of chokes me up to know that the childhood messages handed down from generation to generation is so important to give our children the positive messages. And it's not that we don't love our kids. It's not that we don't cherish our children, but we can't give them what we don't have. We can't, no matter how much we try. I just wanted to end on that. Please listen to my podcast on The Problem Was Me. I think it can help a lot of people out there, parenting as well as addiction and infidelity.
Tom, as always, I can't thank you enough. This is why I was so excited about our time together, because you have so much to give. I'd like to bring you in again sometime. We've covered so many topics today and helped so many people. I can't wait to have you come back. Tell everybody about your 3rd book. You're editing your 3rd book. Tell them when that's going to be released.
The 3rd book, I'm in the middle of editing, and it's about couples intimacy. And it's about how we join together as a couple. And of course, it has chapters on infidelity as well, because at the end of the day, if the infidelity doesn't happen, the intimacy will never happen. So that has to happen first, but then it gives you like a blueprint of where to go from there. And what to, I believe in 3 things: self-awareness, action, and maintenance. Without self-awareness, we don't know what action to take. And without action, there's really nothing to maintain. So that's what I talk about in my 1st book, and I piggyback it into my 2nd and 3rd book.
Tom, this has been incredible as usual. Thank you so much. Remind everybody where they can find your information, where they can find your podcast. Just help them understand how can they get more of your wisdom.
Thank you, Sam. So my website is theproblemwasme.com. And on the website, I have a lot of media reels. I'm on the Jenny McCarthy show when she had the show, often Dr. Oz, Bishop Jakes, TD Jakes. So there's a lot of good media on there, TV and radio. And if you want to find my podcast, anywhere you listen to podcasts, put in the search bar, The Problem Was Me, and scroll down. They have like the 27th first. So scroll down to the first one, and they're only about 20 minutes each. I try to make it short and concise. And just go 1, 2, and onward as far as you want to go. And please, you notify me on The Problem Was Me. Let me know how they're helping you, not helping you. I'd love feedback. It opens my mind up to how to enhance my ability to help people even more. So you can always email me and give me feedback, whatever you want to do on my theproblemwasme.com website.
I kind of threw that at you at the end, but Tom, a wonderful factor is just your humility, which is refreshing to say, hey, I'd love feedback. That's why I know myself and my viewers can trust you, because you are humble and you're open and you want feedback. As always, thanks for being with us, Tom. Have a great rest of your day. We're thankful for you.
You know, Sam, honestly, is that I have a master's degree in social work. I have a CMAT certificate. But when I speak, because I'm a keynote speaker too, I tell people right away, my grammar ain't too goodly. This is who I am, and accept me or not, that's your choice. So thank you.
Thanks so much for being with us, Tom. Take care, buddy.